Hey boys and girls, it's Miss Lisa. I hope you've had a wonderful week this week, and I hope everything's going great for you. And I know you're doing an amazing job with your schoolwork. Well, today we're going to be in the book of Exodus. We finished up with Genesis, and last week we talked about Joseph and all of his brothers and grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. So we're going to the first chapter of Exodus today, and we're going to look at Moses' life. So let me help you understand about what happened. So I have drawn some pictures. So sit there and laugh with me as you look at my pictures and my drawings, but I'm going to tell the story using the pictures to help us out. So believe it or not, this is a picture of Joseph. Joseph ended up in Egypt. And when there was no food to be found in the land, kind of like we have no toilet paper now, there was no food. And so Joseph asked his brothers to come to Egypt and live with him. So each of his 12 brothers came, and that's where they ended up, was in Egypt. Now, Joseph and his brothers had bunches of kids, and they had kids, and they had kids, and they had kids. And all of a sudden, we're going to pretend all these little dots are Israelites. There were so many Israelites in the land of Egypt. They were everywhere. And the Pharaoh, or the king, who had been alive when Joseph was alive, he died. And the next Pharaoh that came, well, he didn't remember anything about Joseph. But there was one thing we know about him. He looked at all those Israelites and he was not happy. He looked at them and he thought, oh no, if we're ever attacked by another country, those Israelites will come and they'll join the other country, and then we'll be left, and all of a sudden, the Israelites will be in charge of Egypt, and the Egyptians won't. So he came up with a plan. His plan was, we're going to take the Israelites and make them our slaves. They're going to help us build these pyramids and these buildings and all these other things. And they'll make bricks using straw and clay and mud. And that's what we're going to have them do. So the Pharaoh, who was not a very nice person, ended up doing that. And he thought by being slaves that the Israelites wouldn't have that many children. Oh, that did not work. The Israelites had even more children. And as they were slaves, they were just miserable. Well, God knew that something needed to be done. So this mean Pharaoh decided, you know what? This isn't working, making them slaves. So I'm going to say that no baby boys will be allowed to live in Egypt. There cannot be an Israelite baby boy here. And if someone is having a baby boy and delivers that baby boy, then away that baby boy goes. And if you want to know what happens to him, you can look in your Bible, first chapter of Exodus, and find out how evil and mean this Pharaoh was. Well, in this land of Egypt, there was an Israelite family. And the daddy was actually a great-great-great-grandson of Levi. And he and his wife were expecting a baby. They already had 2 children, but they were expecting another baby. And they were very excited about it, but also very nervous because they knew if it was a baby boy, it would not be allowed to stay in Egypt. And so she had the baby. And for a while, she was able to keep that baby in her house. And they were very quiet, and she hid them because she didn't even want her neighbors to know that she had a baby boy in her house, because they would tell on her. And so she was very quiet about it. But the baby grew like babies do, and you know what happened? It started making noises. And so the baby's mother knew, oh my, I'm going to have to do something with this baby. What shall I do? So she thought and she prayed and she got busy. And she was so busy, she made a basket for her baby son. And she wove that basket, and then she put tar, which is like the black stuff that holds the rocks together on the road. She put it on the outside of it so that the basket would float and the baby boy would be okay. Now, evidently, she did some planning because she must have gone out and watched the Pharaoh's daughter. She would be a princess, and she would watch when she would come to the Nile River. That must have been a great meeting spot or place to go swimming or whatever. And she would watch, and she would notice when the Pharaoh's daughter would come. So she put baby Moses in his basket, and then she went down to the river with Miriam, Moses' sister. And she put the basket down in the river in among the reeds so that he would be safe and wouldn't float down the river. And then she went and she waited. And she waited. Now, this is not the best looking princess in the world, but the princess came by and she heard something. She heard a baby crying in the river, and she sent one of her helpers down, and sure enough, inside that basket was baby Moses. She took him out, and it was love at first sight. She loved him so much. She took him home, or she was planning on taking him home and raising him as her son. But Miriam runs up and says, "Do you need someone to help you with that baby?" And she goes, "Why, I do." So Moses actually got to spend his first few years of life with his mom and his dad and his brothers and sisters in his home, and he was raised by them. Later, when he was a little bit older, he came to the palace, and there he lived in the palace as a prince. And he lived with the Pharaoh and with his mother. Now, things were really good for him in the palace, but we're going to find out next week how things kind of changed. And Moses' life takes a total turnaround where he goes from being a prince and living in the palace to herding sheep. So, I hope you have a great week. I have some activities that we're going to do with baby Moses, and you can look at those on the website. But I want you to have an amazing week, an amazing time with your family, and work really hard for me. All right, bye-bye. I'll see you later.